Okay, welcome to the Get Sign and Succeed podcast. My name is Bruce Badgley, and along with me here is Craig Cox from One of One Life Skills. How you doing, my man?
I'm blessed as always. How
Great,
about
great,
you?
and good. We've got our buddy Andrew Cohen from Recruited Consulting, just about ready to dive in there. There's Andrew. You can see him signing on. So the gang's all here. How about that?
Love it.
Love it, love it. So Andrew getting signed in. It's obviously Labor Day, and it's been a
Memorial
good
Day.
family time, and we are live. Andrew, glad to have you with us tonight.
Sorry about that. Some internet problems and the volume I'm having problems with. But anyway, good to have you guys tonight.
Yeah, good to have everybody together. Hopefully everybody had a very good holiday weekend. Here in Pennsylvania anyway, it was filled with football for me. Broadcasted a high school all-star game on Friday night, and then the Big 33 game was yesterday. That is the Maryland All-Stars versus the Pennsylvania All-Stars. Pennsylvania scored the winning touchdown with like a minute 30 to go to
Wow.
win 31-27. So it was a really great game with a lot of great players. And so, yeah, fantastic. So I was filled with football. How about you there, Craig? What was your weekend like?
Catching up on a lot of work, meetings, and all that good stuff. Chasing the 4-year-old around.
4-year-old. Wow. How about you, Andrew?
Yeah.
Work and a lot of yard work.
Work
So,
and a lot of yard work.
Yep.
Well, that's good. That's good. I'll tell you what, one of the things that we want to start the show out with, and you guys should be able to see that, on your screen there too. We've had a lot of people want to get, information. I know that we're going to be doing, or Andrew, both you and Craig, free evaluations, and Andrew, even free film evaluations there. All of your information on screen there. And one of the things that you always talk about is the fact that, just pick up the phone and give you a call, right? I mean, if you've got any questions regarding, recruiting or anything to do with football, getting ready for the next level, correct?
Yes, for sure. We'll give a free film evaluation and also a social media assessment. And then just any direct questions that you have. I mean, we try to cover a lot of topics, but there's only so many direct questions we can help answer for people on these shows. So.
Sure. And Coach Cox there, one of one life skills .com. Craig, talk a little bit about, what you work with in getting students ready for the next level.
My program is all about teaching what successful people do. Successful people have common traits and skills, and that's what we teach. And a byproduct of that is having a higher GPA, better test scores, because if you do what successful people do, you're going to be successful in the classroom, on the field, and in life.
And our topic this week of Get Signed and Succeed is the college scholarship timetable, of which academics is, a big portion, in getting, obviously, college scholarships. And, there are obviously the different levels of college football that, everybody understands that they are. And each particular level has its own kind of timetable on exactly how these coaches are going about their recruiting process and, their offers. So Division One, Andrew, is a little bit different really than both of the other divisions there, and the fact that it's really split up into two classifications, right?
Yeah, so the big time Division One, that's called FBS. They have 85 full scholarships on their roster. Excuse me. There's no such thing as partial football scholarships at the major college level. And that, so that's Big Ten, ACC, SEC, Conference USA, they're all the same with 85 on their roster. And then you have FCS. FCS is, I'm old school. I still call it 1AA football. But the maximum for that level is 63 equivalents. Equivalents mean they can split them up. Now, the majority of their scholarships are full. And then typically at the end there, they might give some partials, like maybe they'll give 4 or 5 kids and split up 2 scholarships amongst those 4 or 5 kids. It just depends. Now you have the Ivy League, which is FCS football and extremely good football, but they do not give any athletic scholarships. They give need-based money. That means the money they can give you is based on financial aid, and whether you play a sport or not is irrelevant. It's you're getting the same amount of money if you play football or not. And if you stop playing football, you still get that same amount of money. There's also the Pioneer League. The Pioneer League schools like Marist and Butler and San Diego and Drake and Dayton are really good football schools, really good academic institutions that they don't give football scholarships either, but they do give academic money and financial aid as well. So that's the Division I level and how the scholarships are allocated.
So Craig, obviously you're very much in tune with, academic and what have you. Talk a little bit about, some of the academics that are, for guys to, get a scholarship. What are some of the academic items that these guys have to be paying attention to?
Well, key thing is you got to understand, even if you do get a scholarship, it's going to be contingent on you being eligible and you being able to get into that institution. For Division I, you need a 2.3 in your core GPA. Now, you got to understand what the core GPA is. It's not the GPA that's really listed at the top of your transcript. That's your overall cumulative GPA. Core GPA doesn't include art or doesn't include PE or advanced PE or the second year of advanced PE. All the classes everybody loves to take, especially like I did when I was young, because they're easy grades. These are core classes. So you need to have a 2.3 GPA in your 16 core classes, and you have to have passed, or you have to have taken at least 10 of those core classes going into your senior year. So you can't wait till your senior year to decide that you want to, get it done right and go to college. You have to be working at and progressing through, matriculating through as you go. Now, as far as your core classes, that includes your English, your math, science, social science, those type of classes. And you need 16 of those with an average GPA of 2.3 for Division I. And for Division II, I know you haven't gotten into that, you need a 2.2 core GPA.
So related to Division I, and obviously this show is about Timetable. In Division I, FBS, Andrew, where are they recruiting for right now to, in May of 2023? Who are they looking at?
So the top FBS conferences and programs, if they're not done with this class, right, that means the 24 class, 23 is done. Excuse me, but even the 24 class, it's pretty close to being done if it's not. They've got a lot of offers out if they're not all committed. Obviously it's a case-by-case basis, but people need to know that there are many schools, if they're not done with this 24, they're pretty close to being done. That's FBS. FCS, usually during the junior year, the majority of their offers are taking place between May and probably October. But, if you're not offered by August by an FCS, it doesn't mean you're definitely not getting offered, but, hopefully you've gone to the camp that you want to go to that school, and hopefully they're telling you that they want to see your first few games. That can be a company line, but it can be also legitimate. Okay. And that's not, even at the FBS, if you're a very good school, but you're not quite Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, one of those guys, right? And you lose a kid, because you lose a kid because something happened that a kid decided not to go to Alabama anymore. Alabama takes the kid from then has to take another kid from another program, and now that program has to take another kid. So it's kind of like the domino effect. But the majority of the recruiting, again, FBS level for juniors right now, they're well on their way to trying to finish their class. For FCS, they're just now, a lot of their offers are starting to go out, and a lot of their offers are going to be confirmed through camp. But there's many, many spots remaining that are still open at the FCS level. So sorry if I've gotten confusing. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone.
Oh, I think
You
it does
guys
make,
are more than welcome to go on the chat and ask us any questions, any specific questions as well.
yeah, and I did put that out there for the guys to throw on there. One other question that I had too is, related to, what are some of the telltale signs? And you're talking about, FCS schools. What are the telltale signs that an FCS school, obviously, besides the fact that they'll invite you to the camp, that they're really interested in you?
Direct contact. These rules are going to change starting in August. You're going to have unlimited calls, but at this point, it's April 15th till May 31st. They have one call at the Division I level to a junior recruit. But they can also direct text you and ask you to call them. They can direct message you on Twitter. I think it becomes, when it's consistent contact and they're saying things in the notes that pertain to you and only you, not general statements. But definitely when they're communicating on a consistent basis through phone calls, through text messages, and messages on Twitter. If they're going to offer you, if they haven't offered you yet, but you're a strong candidate, they're going to, at the Division I level, whether it's FBS or FCS, they're going to give you a lot of attention.
What's your thoughts on the handwritten letter? I mean, I see a lot of the kids, they're getting a handwritten letter from a coach. What's your thoughts on that?
I used to think that meant a lot. I used to think it meant a lot more than it means now. It still means, if it's handwritten all the way through, it still means that coach had to take the time to write you that letter. So that's a good thing. But sometimes I know kids are getting handwritten letters, and I don't know who's writing that letter, to be honest with you. And sometimes I know that a kid might not be appropriate for the level that's writing him that letter. But typically, it's definitely a very good sign.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Not a guarantee. Craig,
Good stuff.
would you agree with that with your experiences?
No, absolutely. I mean, especially now as big as some of these recruiting departments are for some of the bigger schools, a lot of that type
that
of
was
work
my
is probably
point.
being done by a GA or a
Right.
student assistant type thing. But
sure, authentication.
Can I be the bad guy real quick for one second?
Hell yeah.
Just before we move on from FBS and the timeline, if you are a 23 or 24 student athlete and you have not committed, you've not been offered by an FBS school or committed to an FBS school by now, you may want to listen to the FCSs and D2s that are calling you, because I know a lot of students, when I was in FCS, a lot of students still thought they were going to get that FBS offer, and they push you away, and then you find out that they end up not going anywhere. And then by that time, we filled our spots on our roster, and we couldn't help them out. So always keep an open mind. If you have not committed by now and you're at 23 or 24, you better look at your options.
Yeah, that's good advice. So now down to
I have a quick one for you. I think it's a great point,
Sure.
what he said. I always think you need to draw a line. So what I mean by that is he's totally correct. Listen to anyone that talks to you. And then once you get an offer, then the remaining offers you get, if they're not above that school in your eyes, then, you can politely tell them, you have other offers you're more excited about. But until then, until you set that bar and until you get something better than it, you need to, make sure they know you're very interested, because you never know. There's no exactness to this recruiting business, unfortunately.
That is correct. That's why we have this show.
Right.
So let's talk about D2, Andrew. I mean, let's move on to D2, and how that works with the type of scholarships that are being offered and obviously when the D2 schools are offering.
So the Division II schools have a maximum of 36 equivalent scholarships. So they're all pretty much partials, but they can combine that with financial aid or with academic money. But there are very, very few schools that actually give the full 36. So we live in Pennsylvania where you have the PSAC, and the PSAC split up between the eastern and the western portion. The eastern portion, they're probably 7 to 15 scholarships on their whole team split up. That's all they get. And then when you get to the west, though, there's a lot more. I don't know exact numbers, but there are schools that are at 18 or 20, but there are a few schools that are already all the way up to 36.
So that's
the
a
full
pretty
equivalencies.
that's a big drop in obviously scholarship from FCS to D2.
It is, especially when in FCS, and correct me if I'm wrong, Craig. I mean, there's very few schools if they're allowed to give scholarships, then they're not giving as many as they can. Something I should correct myself with is, the Patriot League, right? Lehigh, Lafayette, Bucknell, Colgate, Holy Cross, their conference has limited them to 60 equivalent scholarships, even though the NCAA says 63. And then there's the Northeast Conference. That's schools like Duquesne, Central Connecticut, Wagner, Sacred Heart, really nice conference. They're at 45. But because they're at 45, they can give other money. They can give academic money. So even if they can get a kid in to their program academically, sometimes it's a lot better for them to take a higher academic kid. So they can get, not all the money comes from football. So I'm sorry I went off the subject, but I thought that was important and it was something I didn't include earlier.
Well,
But the Division II is all partial pretty much. Their offers are not typically till maybe the start of the senior year, but more typically mid to later year. They want to see how it's going. They want to see if a kid maybe doesn't qualify. That's a Division I kid that might not qualify for Division I standards, but does for the Division II. And coach will go over the difference with that. And then, the portal thing they're waiting on right now, that's a whole nother discussion we've already had. But they're definitely going to be later. So, they want to see those kids in summer. They want to see them at camps to be able to compare them. They want to see their film, but they typically don't seem to be in a very big rush.
yeah, Craig, talk
So,
about, from an academic perspective of D2. It's pretty wide ranging, right? The D2 has a lot of schools that are that have some pretty high academic standards, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, it is a very wide range, but as far as the NCAA goes, for D2 is a 2.2 in the core, and it still requires the 16 core classes. A lot changed when they stopped taking the SAT and ACT, and I don't know if they're going to go back to that. But I know at one point in time it was D2 didn't have a sliding scale like D1 did, and now I believe they did. They added that to D2. But I don't know if they're going to go back to the standardized test or they're going to stay with the GPA as far as the NCAA is concerned. But you still have to get into the school. So if you do have an academic or higher academic school at the D2 level, the 2.2 in your core is the last thing you're going to be worried about. You're going to be worried about getting a much higher GPA to get into the school to begin with.
And it seems to me too that because of the fewer amount of scholarships that they have, that they would be very that they would be more particular, that they would take their time, that they would really almost have to really do some due diligence with these players to make sure they're getting the right guys in the right spots that are going to be successful, that it is a good fit, right, Craig?
Yeah, I know one thing is when I was coaching D2, this was back before the early signing period. You pretty much were waiting around to see who didn't get signed by D1. And now that you got the early signing period, you kind of get that You know that now, and I think that helps the kids too, because they're waiting around, till February 3rd in the, before the early signing period. They were waiting around to the last second too, because they were still hoping to get that D1 offer. And so everything was kind of happening at the same time. Now that you have the early signing period, you kind of weed out who is actually going to get signed by D1 and who's going to be left. So I think that helped not only the programs, but it helped the student athletes out as well.
Andrew, I had a question for you. Are these schools that are typically only offering partial scholarships, when they make contact with the players, are they telling them that it's only a partial scholarship but not a full scholarship?
So, and Craig, please correct me if I'm wrong, because you have a lot of experience in the Division II level. But for me, in my experience, they typically tell a kid, we're offering you a scholarship at the Division II level, and then they're putting it together. They got to get all their paperwork in to find, does he get academics? Does he get financial aid? And then how much money is he worth from a football scholarship standpoint? But in my experience, a lot of times they wait for the kid to visit. And then at that point, they present their scholarship offer. And I always say this to all my clients. It doesn't matter where the money comes from, as long as you get the money. So don't be overly concerned with just the football scholarship money. Be concerned with the bottom line. How much money are they giving you academically or financial aid, or however they find a way to give you some money. And then the bottom line is what you're concerned with. And that is, how much are you going to have to pay?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And before we go, a little further, what I want to do, quite honestly, is I really want to get the contact information up on screen again, because obviously these are all great questions that probably a lot of student athletes and definitely, parents and families need some help with, not only on the academic side and obviously with life skills there with Coach Cox, but Coach Cohen with Get Recruited Consulting. I'll tell you what, it's got my head spinning already just by what we've been talking about, at this level. Like, how much money is he going to get? What colleges are offering? And obviously when they can expect the offers there, right? Correct?
Right. Let me add to what Coach was saying, what he was talking about from a Division II standpoint. They call it a grant and aid package. And that's what it actually says. And it could include football or athletic money. It can include academic money. It can include your financial aid, your Pell, that type of stuff. Typically at Division II, Division I, if you qualify for Pell, you typically get that back in a refund. Division II, they usually use that Pell in your grant and aid package to help pay for your school. So that's one big difference. But like Coach said, as long as it's not coming out of your pocket, I don't care if it's academic money or scholarship. But to add to that, academic money is better in most cases than athletic money, because you are more in control of whether you keep that academic money. Athletic money, there's no such thing as a 4-year athletic scholarship. It's 1 year renewable every year. So if you get a whole new coaching staff, God forbid, you go to a school and then a year later they get a new coaching staff and you go from being a spread offense to a triple option offense. I mean, you might not fit the program. They don't need a reason to take athletic money. It's a 1 year renewable contract every single year. Now, a lot of schools try to honor it as much as they can if you sign and go. But understand that in a legal standpoint, an athletic scholarship is 1 year renewable, where academic money, you keep getting it based off your GPA.
Right.
Am I right, Coach?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah.
I think Coach is making some great points. I mean, we could talk about this, but I have found since the portal, and I'm not in favor of this at all. I think it's ethically wrong a little bit, but a lot of the FCS schools, I shouldn't say a lot, and FBS, if a kid's not quite what they thought of them, or if they feel they can get better, even in the portal, they're pushing those kids out. Now, legally, if that kid doesn't want to leave, they have to find a reason of what they did wrong. So it would be a social problem, an academic problem, or not doing what they're supposed to. And they can maybe find something, but if he's a good kid, what they're doing now, I've got these stories firsthand. They're aggressively telling those kids they're never going to play there. They should go to the portal and transfer to another school. And they're doing that so in their eyes, they can get another proven player that's better than that player on their roster right now. I know that sounds terrible. I don't think it's right, but I do know that that is happening at some schools right now.
Well, we still have one division left, and that's Division III. So, Andrew, talk a little bit about Division III. Obviously, they're not offering, athletic scholarships, but as Craig talked about, it's a financial aid package is what they're offering these students, and they would play sports, right?
So the packages they're offering are financial aid, but also academic scholarship money. We have had clients go to a Division III school that was a better academic school, and they also got more money. Not all, in all cases, but in many cases, in most cases, Division III schools are higher academically than the Division II schools, and their endowment is higher, so they have more money. Because of that, their financial aid packages a lot of times are better, and so is the academic grants that they're able to give. However, they're not allowed to give any football scholarship money.
Well, I had a question here. So they put together, and Craig, you jump in too. So they Division III schools here, they get this financial package and say, hey, we're offering you $10,000 to come here. Are they showing you what the actual tuition cost is so that you can correlate what that $10,000 means to the student?
All the ones I've seen had the cost of attendance and that type of stuff on them as well.
Yeah, they all do, and they're very upfront with.
Yeah.
They even put in there the cost of books, the cost of travel, and as someone that has a college student, I think they're also inflated some of those costs. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The cost of books aren't usually as what they list them as. They're usually a little cheaper if your son or daughter can be crafty. And then the travel, I'm not really worried about that because that's not money you're paying up front, but it is eventually you're going to have to pay for it. You know what I mean?
So how many football players, obviously, since they don't have real athletic scholarships, how many football players will Division III school typically go after, Andrew?
So that's a great question. And it varies drastically. There are schools out there that need football. They need the applications. They need the kids to pay for their school, for their male enrollment, without question. Okay. But then there's other schools. Let's start with the NESCAC. That's the New England small schools in like Amherst and Williams and Middlebury and Bowdoin and Wesleyan and Trinity. They are kind of like, they call them the little Ivies. So they're pretty similar to the Ivies. Okay. They have, not every school is the same, but let's just, without getting too complicated, because this can be a show in itself, somewhere around 12 to 16 kids, somewhere in that range, that they can help per year to help get into school. They have to be really good students. They have to apply. They typically have to go early decision. Okay. But that's what they get. Now, the other kids they get can either get in on their own, or if they had a parent that went to the school, or if they had a grandparent. If they're a minority student, they might not be counted as one of those 12 to 16 either. And then, but there's other schools that are, that are helping kids get in. Not, they're all great students, but, if your kid if they had no pull at some of these schools in their football program, it would be very, very hard to have a football program.
And that timetable literally there's no real start and end, is there?
There is actually. So, well, in the NESCAC conference, it used to be July 1st was the first day that they can start offering kids. Now, when they offer them, there's no guarantee, and they're very upfront. They can't say, hey, we're going to get you into school. We're going to support your application is the term they use. And they could say, and they can post that I'm committed to the application process at school A or B. But they have to continue to do well in school. They have to stay out of trouble. They have to do a great job with their application. And if they do all those things, the majority of the time they're fine. Okay. And there's other schools, and not just the NESCAC, that are at the Division III level that are very high academically, and they get a few kids that they can help get into school. It's not a tremendous amount of kids, but there are some kids that they can help, and they are really good students. They're not kids that are ever low at those kinds of schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously we talked about the scholarships that are going to, Division I FBS, FCS, Division II, Division III. But there's one particular position that kind of has its own unique scholarship timetable, and that's quarterbacks, right, Andrew?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, especially at the Division I level, when I say Division I FBS, many of those quarterbacks are getting offered as 10th graders, even as 9th graders, which that used to be, in my mind, 5-7 years ago, that was a rarity that a kid got offered as a 10th grader, and now it's definitely not rare. It doesn't mean he's not going to get offered.
What caused it to change? What caused it to change?
I can't. I personally can't answer that. I don't know for sure, but I think they're trying to find a kid, and maybe they see something special, and I do think kids are more developed and they're more polished at the quarterback position than ever before. But I think if they find a kid they really like, why wait? And maybe, hey, if I'm the first one, they'll remember me. That's definitely a possibility, but I don't have a direct answer. But the quarterback is the future of your program typically, and you go as your quarterback goes. So if you can secure the quarterback spot and then work that recruiting class around that quarterback, you're going to probably be successful. And if you look at it, if I was a young quarterback looking at colleges, I would want to know track record of that staff. Have they developed quarterbacks? Have their quarterbacks been successful? Have they stayed in the program? Because you will see at every level when you're looking at teams that there are some programs that always have good quarterbacks and some don't. It is not a coincidence. When I was at Bucknell University, Coach Dan Hunt was the offensive coordinator. Saw him the other day. He's now the offensive coordinator at Lehigh. Great guy, really good coach. They always had a quarterback at Colgate that was all conference. And he was always a kid that everyone in the recruiting process said, we're not going to take him. He's not good enough. And he always was good enough. So they did something. I don't know what the answer is, but their evaluation process and their development process, in my professional opinion, was better than anyone in the league. Not to take anything away from some great schools and great coaches in that league, but I thought Colgate at quarterback, it was unique that they were always getting a kid and it was always questioned and then he was always good.
Craig, how is somebody going to know that they've been given an offer?
Well, direct talking to the coach. I mean, on the phone. I mean, obviously, or I guess they don't do the offer letters much anymore. It's usually a conversation on the phone call now with a coach or in person when you're at a camp. Depends on how that is. Coach Cohen, I'd like for you to touch on NAIA for a second too. I mean, me as a graduate student at UPike University, we're getting a little sick of you NCAA guys all the time, forgetting about the poor little NAIA here. So now,
so the NAIA has 24 equivalent scholarships. Their academic standards, I don't know exactly. That would be Coach Cox, but they're a little bit lower than the NCAA. They're not part of the NCAA. It's their own governing body, the NAIA. I do find, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they have some really good schools, some really good science and math programs in a lot of the NAIAs. They're all over, but there's a ton of them in the Midwest. And it's interesting. I find that a lot of the kids, if you're a good student and you're a high level Division III kid, a high level to a Division II type of player, they can get more money academically there. And their total package at times is better. And some of those schools cost a lot less. We had a few kids go to NAIA this year, and I was given their packages, and these kids got some pretty good. Right. We were hired late. When I say late, like January or February, and they we got them scholarships. I shouldn't say that. I'm sorry. They got them scholarships. We just opened their eyes to some new places.
How about junior colleges? I mean, are guys getting money to go to junior colleges or?
Yeah, they can. They can. Not all of them do it that way, but there definitely are a bunch of them at junior college that get scholarships. So if you're a non-qualifier in the Northeast here, that's a big reason. If you can't qualify academically for the academic standards, then you go to a junior college, and if you can get a scholarship, that's great. You're not paying anything. But if you're not a qualifier, you have to get an associate's degree, which means you need you're going to be there for 2 years, and you're going to have 3 years to play too.
Is that something that you would advise a student and family of based on, academic, on what particular route they should go?
I think if you ask me, I think you have to make a good decision as a family of who is your son, what is his discipline, and is there going to be any academic support there? Some do a great job, others don't, like any other college. But you're sending him to this junior college because you know he hasn't been a good enough student. So if he doesn't have the support there, a lot of those kids fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and obviously, if people have questions, there's your information on screen. 570-428-2872. Very generous of your time, very generous in, film evaluations. Highly recommend that anybody who has any questions or looking for some advice, obviously Andrew, willing to listen. Coach Cox with one-of-one life skills in talk about pointing people in the right direction. Just done a great job in, teaching the skills of successful people so that you can be successful yourself. I mean, just great stuff there, guys, on, what you're doing. And I hope people take advantage of it. I know that you guys are all over social media, and it's, it's kind of crazy, all your stuff out there, but yet so valuable to this whole process. And, we touched on it over this, show here, is there are so many things, and rarely is anything cut and dry, right, guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna pull any punches. We want to help people. We're not trying to, hold back here and not tell people all the inside information. And that's why we offer you to ask questions. We're going to give you real answers, and we offer people the ability to get on a call with us. So, there's a lot of information about this recruiting process, and every young man's situation in college football recruiting is unique. They're all different. So we'd love to help you guys.
There's so much information. We've had 8 shows. This is our 8th episode, and we're barely scratching the surface. And we've got, over the next couple of weeks, we got a couple other great shows. Next week, NIL. I mean, wow, that's that's going to be kind of crazy. And the week following that, off-season preparation. I mean, 2 great shows coming up, guys, that I'm chomping at the bit to get more information on. And just a little funny thing to kind of whet everybody's appetite on the show for next week is I'm on the field in the Big 33 game, and I see a little kid go up to, a college player who was on the field for an autograph, but he said he couldn't do it. So, he couldn't sign anything. So, very, very interesting changes coming to formerly amateur athletics, between high school and, college and everything else. And we'll, probably dive right up to our neck next week, with this NIL. That's going to be a pretty great show. Listen, guys, thank you so much. I mean, we kind of went to our 40-minute allotment here. We could probably go a lot longer, but remember too, I mean, we're going to be touching on these topics again. All of this stuff is on demand, but the best part is if people have any questions, they just need to give you guys a call. I mean, I mean, your information is always available. There it is. 570-428-2872 for Coach Cohen. For Coach Cox with all the life skills training there at One of One Life Skills, 573-416-0829. Just, give them a call. And if those guys, if Craig and Andrew can't answer your question regarding college recruiting, getting in college, getting the right fit for you as a person, I'd be shocked, because these gentlemen have so much knowledge and experience that so many people could take advantage of. So anyway, all right, guys. Well, listen, another great show in the books, and NIL next week. I think what the funny thing is, as I've gone around and I've been talking to people and telling them about the show, it's been the one topic that is always, if you guys talked about NIL. Everybody asks me that question when we have a recruiting, about a recruiting podcast, and I was going to say, yeah, we'll get to it. And next week, I think we'll get to it, and like I said, we'll wade through it. So, guys, anything as we close?
Just have a blessed night and happy Memorial
Have a good
Day.
night. And we look forward to talking to more of you next weekend.
All right. Thank you very much for
Thanks, guys.
For getting with us here on the Get Signed and Succeed podcast, episode 8, episode 9, NIL next week. Talk to you later, gang. See ya.
Take care.